Some of you all are still funny to me, man. You know what's kind of sad to me? Or if not sad, maybe that's too strong of a word, but what's disappointing? I was talking to this woman last night. And we got to talking about my books. Because she was intrigued about my books. And I basically gave her the gist of all of my books. And particularly Mode 1 and Possibility of Sex. And to a lesser extent, Who'll Say It Again. And this has happened a number of times before. She totally got it. She totally got it. There was nothing I had to explain to her 2, 3, 4, 5 times about why I do what I do. I mean, after I gave her the gist of each book and each major principle in my book, she was like, oh, I totally understand why you do XYZ or why you do ABC. I totally understand why you do it. Yeah. She was even objective enough to acknowledge the more highly manipulative members of her own gender, which is sometimes rare. But yeah, basically her general assessment of my books was, Alan, given what I know about my own gender and how highly manipulative a lot of women can be, she said, your Mode 1 approach makes perfect sense. She said it makes perfect sense. And interesting enough, I've had some women who didn't even particularly care for my books, who maybe didn't like Mode 1 or didn't like the Possibility of Sex, that at minimum, they understood it. They understood the logic behind it. They may not have, been willing to endorse either book, but they understood it. Yet, I have some men, sometimes even clients of mine or loyal followers of mine, who would need me to explain stuff 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 10 times. And it's they'll still be like, okay, I don't get it. Ellen, I don't get why you want us to do this and want us to not do this and want us to say this and want us to not say that. It's a lot of men, because of what's been ingrained in their mind over the last few years or the last 1 or 2 decades, they just don't get it. Whereas again, man, I have women I talk to that get it like that. They're like, oh, I totally get the Mode 1 approach. I totally get what motivates you to want to exhibit the Mode 1 approach with women. And so that's just interesting to me. And for the purpose of this video, I always like to start off saying it's not going to be too long. And then it ends up being 40 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour, hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half. So I'm not going to try to predict how long this video is going to be. I'm going to just say I'm going to try to weed out all my miscellaneous, extraneous type conversation. Just stick to. Now, if you've been familiar with what's known as the attraction and seduction community, or what's also known as simply the pickup artist community for a number of years, one of the number 1 techniques that's been emphasized among pickup artists is what's known as the 3-date rule. The 3-date rule. And the 3-date rule is basically almost like what it sounds. You make yourself willing to go out on a date with a woman a minimum of 3 times. You might take her on 3 dinner dates, 2 dinner dates and 1 lunch date, 2 lunch dates and 1 dinner date, or 3 lunch dates. Or 1 or 2 of those might be a lunch date and a movie, or a dinner date and a movie, or a dinner date and a concert, or something like that. And your expectation is that if this woman does not allow me at minimum to make out with her by the end of the third date, I'm going to leave her alone. And even more so, if this woman does not agree to engage in oral sex and or intercourse with me by the end of the third date, I'm going to leave her alone. That's what's generally known as the 3-date rule. That you limit the number of dates you go on with a woman to 3 dates without her putting out. Again, at bare minimum, you expect her to allow you to just totally make out with her. Basically do everything but engage in oral sex and or intercourse. And at maximum, you expect her to engage in oral sex with you and or intercourse with you by the end of the third date. That's the 3-date rule. Now, if you remember, I've said this on multiple videos, so I'm going to be repeating this ad nauseum. But I always say there's generally 5 ways to get a woman in bed. Okay? There's 5 ways to get a woman in bed. To repeat them again: attraction, seduction, dishonesty and manipulation, financial negotiation, and coercion. I wrote a Negro Manosphere article. I'll probably post it in the comment section along with my most recent article. Now, my most recent article on the Negro Manosphere, I got a lot of feedback on that one. I interviewed this dominatrix, this woman who's a BDSM dominatrix. And she basically said men are weak. That's not what this video is about, but I just want you to read that article. Yeah, she came up with a strong criticism, man. She said us men as a group are weak because we crave sex and we crave feminine energy. And she said the fact that we crave both of those makes us the weaker gender. Insert dog face here. Now, she's probably at least half right. I would say no less than half the men in society I would put in the category that she would describe as being just weak for sex and weak for femininity. That's what we most of us call thirsty. That's basically what it means to be thirsty. When you're a man who just craves, have an insatiable craving for women's sexual companionship and what she called their feminine energy in general, that's basically a man who's thirsty. And what I told her is that obviously not all men are thirsty. I know I'm not. I love fucking, but I'm not no thirsty motherfucker. I won't do anything to get into a woman's pants. But I'll save that for another video, responding to some of the stuff she said in that article. Yeah, again, that'll be in the comment section. But going back to this 3-day rule. Without getting too lengthy, here's what I have an issue with. Going back to the 5 ways of getting a woman in bed. Again. Attraction. When people promote attraction, I rarely, if ever, have any issues with that. I mean, because attraction is what it is. In simple terms, when you're getting a woman in bed because of attraction, that means you're drawing women to you. Either something about your physical appearance and physical presence, the overall way you carry yourself, whatever. Anytime you're able to get pussy simply by drawing women to you and they essentially just offer you the pussy, they might approach you first and tell you, hey, I think you're so attractive or I think you're so sexy that I want to give you some pussy. That's attraction. Attraction is anytime you get women in bed because you're able to draw women to you and you just take advantage of the opportunities that women present to you to have sex with them. I mean, that's probably the most simplistic, straightforward way of describing the concept of attraction. Seduction centers around persuasion. Persuasion. And I think most of you know what persuasion. If I'm a restaurant waiter and you come into my restaurant and you tell me you want the entree that has chicken in it. And I persuade you instead to buy the entree that has shrimp in it, or it has turkey in it, or to buy the pork chop meal, or the lasagna, whatever. Basically, I persuade you to say buy an entree that we might have as a special for that day or for that week. Or I want you to buy a more expensive entree. Like say you come in and you want an entree that's going to cost $35, but I want you to buy this entree that's $50 or $55 because I know it's going to give me a bigger tip. See, that would be similar to seduction. Seduction is when you persuade someone, and in this case, women, to choose your preferred option over their preferred option. Okay, you get that? Like, let's say, for example, I meet a woman and she tells me initially that she will only engage in sex with a man who's her long-term boyfriend, fiance, or husband. And I persuade her to engage in sex with me within the context of an episode of short-term, non-monogamous casual sex. See, that would mean I seduced her. That would be a classic example of seduction. Is when she started off saying, I will only have sex with a guy if he's my long-term boyfriend, fiance, or husband. And over the next few minutes, I persuade her to go ahead and engage in an episode, at least one episode of short-term, non-monogamous casual sex with me. That would mean I seduced her. Or another quick example would be if a woman told me she was interested in having sex with me, but she said, Alan, I don't want to have sex with you until 3 weeks from now. And I persuade her instead to have sex with me today, tomorrow, or the next day instead of 3 weeks from now. That would also be an example of seduction and persuasion. I persuaded her to choose my preferred option over her preferred option. You get that? Okay. The next category would be using dishonest, misleading, or emotionally and psychologically manipulative tactics to get a woman in bed. What I simply just call dishonesty and manipulation. When you're using dishonest, misleading, or manipulative tactics to get a woman in bed. Now, obviously, I've had a number of pickup artists that have tried to, debate me, which is more effective. Some other dating coaches. First of all, and you've heard me say this before, I've never said that dishonesty and manipulation doesn't work. I've never said that and never will say that. I've never said that it won't work in terms of getting a woman in bed. So my issue with it is not one of attraction and seduction works and dishonesty and manipulation doesn't work. That's never my argument. You can get women in bed by using dishonest, misleading, and manipulative tactics. You can, especially if a woman is very naive and inexperienced with men. Man, if a woman's young, naive, and very inexperienced with men, sure, you can get some women in bed by being dishonest, misleading, and manipulative. One of my issues with it, number one, is that it's just unethical. And number two, when you engage in manipulative head games with women, you open the door wide open for a woman to engage in manipulative head games with you. And I point that out in my original Mode 1 book. See, manipulation begets manipulation. Or instead of using a word like begets, I'll just simply say invite. Manipulation invites manipulation. That's what most people don't understand. I would say on both genders. A lot of women don't understand that, and a lot of men don't understand that. The more manipulative you are with people, the more you're opening up the door for them to be manipulative with you. In other words, when you're trying to bullshit other people, you open up the door for people to bullshit you. I already pointed out, if there's one movie and it's a comedy, but it still has a great message in that category, would be a movie called Dirty Rotten Scoundrels with Steve Martin and Michael Caine. That movie, probably more than any other movie I can think of, is one of the one movies that highlights that fact. That when you try to manipulate and bullshit other people, you open the door for other people to manipulate and bullshit you. That's at least half the reason why I wrote The Possibility of Sex, is to point that out. But here's my biggest issue with this category and one of the other categories of the 5 categories. I hate when guys, and I would say more specifically, either pickup artists or fellow dating coaches who try to package dishonesty and manipulation as if it's a form of seduction. I'm here to tell you, Alan Roger Currie is here to tell you, no, it's not. No, it's not. Dishonesty and manipulation is not synonymous or a represented or a subcategory of seduction. It's not. Again, seduction centers around persuasion. When you're using dishonesty and manipulation, what you're basically trying to do is you're trying to trick a woman into doing what you want her to do when you want her to do it. Okay, let's go back to the example I used with seduction. I said seduction would be if a woman told you initially that she only wanted to have sex with a man who was a long-term boyfriend, fiance, or husband, and you persuaded her to engage in at least one episode of sex with you that is within the context of short-term, non-monogamous, casual sex. That's seduction. Now, let's take that same example. If a woman tells you that she's only willing to have sex with you within the context of a long-term, if you're her long-term boyfriend, fiance, or husband, and you tell her right at that moment, you say, well, actually, I am attracted to you to the point where I do want you to be my long-term girlfriend. And she says, really? Really? Are you serious? You really care for me that much? And you're like, yeah. So, you spend some time talking on the phone with her. You spend some time hanging out with her. You take her on a few lunch dates, dinner dates. And then she gives you the pussy. Let's say you fuck her, I don't know, maybe 5 times. And then all of a sudden, after you fuck her the 5th time, you say, you know what? I don't really want you to be my girlfriend no more. I'm not really feeling this long-term relationship stuff. I want to break up, but I hope we can still be friends. And she says, you asshole, you jerk. I can't believe you toy with me like that. That's not seduction. Okay? I don't care how you try to package it out. That's not seduction. That's not seduction. I don't even see how anybody with a straight face could even try to present that as if that's a form of seduction. That is not fucking seduction. That's just flat out lying. That's just lying. You lied to the woman, you misled her, you manipulated her, basically, what you did. Psychologically and emotionally, you manipulated the woman into having sex with you, and then once you got what you wanted, you just basically dumped her. But you start off, you lied to her. You basically gave her the impression that you wanted the same preferred option as her. And then after you got what you wanted, you let it be known that, no, the option you want is not the option I want, which is a long-term, emotionally profound, monogamous relationship. Excuse me, my computer's acting up. The fuck is this? Okay. So, that's if no other argument, well, again, 2 arguments. Number one, I just think dishonesty and manipulation is unethical. And I wrote an article about ethics. I'll probably include that too in the comment section. I wrote that a long time ago that was one of my first articles on the Negro Manosphere. Number 2, when you engage in manipulative head games with women, you're opening the door for women to engage in equally effective manipulative head games with you, which again is at least half the reason why I wrote The Possibility of Sex. And number 3, I say this emphatically, one of O'Shea Duke Jackson's favorite words for me to use, emphatically, that's not representative of seduction. And the reason I'm bringing this up because I had at least a couple of followers in the last week write me some feedback asking me why am I so against. One asked me basically in so many words, why am I against being at least a little bit manipulative with women? And the other one asked me why was I totally against the 3-date rule, which I'm about to get to in a second. Now, the next of the 5 categories of getting a woman in bed would be what's known as financial negotiation. And that can include tricking or whining and dining. Tricking or whining and dining. Tricking is basically soliciting a woman to be a short-term sexual companion, which in most cities and most countries is against the law. Excuse me for burping, that's 3 burps. Yeah, formally that would be considered soliciting a prostitute, which is illegal. Yeah, in case some of you young guys didn't know that. It's actually technically, even though a lot of guys do it anyway, but technically it's illegal, particularly in this country, United States. It is illegal for you to say, just go up to a woman and say, I will give you $75 if you suck my dick. You can't do that. Now, some would argue it's stupid why you can't. I wrote an article about that too. Now you're going to have me putting all kinds of articles. I wrote an article called 5 Reasons Why the United States Will Probably Never Legalize Prostitution. But yeah, you can't just walk up to a woman and say, hey, I'll give you $75 if you suck my dick right now. That would be considered solicitation for prostitution. So if you happen to be like, say, hypothetically, you were to say that to a woman who's an undercover cop, an undercover detective, you could literally go to jail for that shit. Yep, you can go to jail for propositioning a woman for sex with money involved. Anytime you proposition a woman for sex with money involved, that's technically considered solicitation of prostitution. That's why I never endorse tricking. Even though I know guys engage in tricking, but you would never hear me enthusiastically endorse it if for no other reason, the simple fact that it is illegal. Depending on what city you live in, what country you live in. Like in Amsterdam, that's legal. Prostitution is legal in a city like Amsterdam. And there's like at least 2 or 3 counties in Nevada where prostitution is actually legal. That's the only, I want to say that, if I'm not mistaken, that's the only state I can think of in the United States where it's legal. There's 2 or 3 counties in Nevada where prostitution is actually legal. But in every other city and state in the United States, prostitution is illegal. Like they even took away Backpage. People used to go on Backpage. That was probably the #1 form of online prostitution. And you saw they took that away like last year. Craigslist doesn't allow personal ads anymore because people were using Craigslist as an indirect form of tricking, online tricking. The most legal variation of tricking would be what most guys and women refer to as whining and dining. Whining and dining. Simple example, whining and dining is related to the 3-date rule. If I met a woman I was attracted to and said I let her know I wanted to have sex with her, and she said, well, if you take me out to dinner to a 5-star restaurant 3 Fridays in a row, I'll suck your dick and give you some of this pussy. And you say, okay. So you take out to dinner 3 Fridays in a row to a 4 or 5-star restaurant. And at the end of the 3rd date, she sucks your dick and gives you some pussy. Technically, you just tricked. I mean, just calling a spade. Technically, you just tricked. But it was legal tricking. It was legal tricking, which is what most people refer to as whining and like most. I'm sure you know that some guys act as sugar daddies to women who they refer to as sugar babies. A lot of men and women have a sugar daddy, sugar baby relationship. That's basically what most sugar daddy, sugar baby relationships center around, is whining and dining. That's basically the #1 legal variation of tricking, is whining and dining. Is when you offer to do stuff like take a woman out to dinner, treat a woman to free meals, buy her materialistic gifts, pay some of her bills, and as a reward, to show her gratitude, she allows you to have access to her sexual companionship. Now, similar to dishonesty and manipulation, I would never say that tricking is ineffective. Surely, a lot of men have gotten in bed with women because of tricking. And similarly, a lot of men have gotten in bed with women because of whining and dining. So I would never say that whining and dining is ineffective unless you're dealing with a manipulative time waster who's going to make you think you're going to get some pussy by taking her out to dinner 3 weeks in a row to a 5-star restaurant. And then at the end of the third day, she says, well, I changed my mind. Sorry. You just got played. But similar to the criticism I have, it's not seduction though. Like this guy who wrote me this email, he was almost trying to suggest that employing the 3-date rule was kind of a form of seduction. I think he said, his question was, Alan, why are you so against the form of seduction known as the 3-date rule? Because it's not fucking seduction. That's why I'm against it. It ain't seduction. That ain't seduction. Tricking ain't seduction. Whining and dining is not seduction. You're not persuading a woman to give in to your preferred option of having sex. That ain't seduction. If I say to a woman, okay, I'm going to use the same example I've been using throughout this video. Let's say you in the company of a woman and you say, I want you to suck my dick. And she says, no, I only do that with a man who's my long-term boyfriend, fiance, or husband. And you say, well, I'll give you $50 to suck my dick. And then after you suck my dick, I'll even take you out to dinner 2 weeks in a row if you suck my dick after each of those dates. And she says, you know what? Okay. Did you just seduce that woman into sucking your dick? Fuck no. You didn't seduce that woman into sucking your dick. That's not seduction. What you did was you engaged in financial negotiation. That's what you did. That's financial negotiation. I will give you this if you do this for me. That's financial negotiation. Anytime you present a person with a situation of, if I will pay you this amount of money or provide you with this amount of materialistic gifts, if in exchange you do this with me and or for me, that's negotiation, man. That's not seduction. So, wait, hold on a second. My computer. I'm getting all these weird pop-ups on my computer. Hope I don't have a virus. In simple terms, again, here are the 5 ways of getting a woman in bed. Attraction, seduction, dishonesty and manipulation, financial negotiation, and coercion. Coercion, which would include rape, date rape, and any other forcible act of sexual assault. Again, a lot of people would try to suggest, and particularly some pickup artists and some dating coaches would try to suggest that dishonesty and manipulation is just a form of seduction. No, it's not. Similarly, some people try to act like even that financial negotiation is a form of seduction. No, it's not. Quit calling it seduction, because it's not. Seduction is all about persuasion. Confident, straightforward, provocative, charming persuasion. That's what seduction is. Seduction is when you persuade a woman to have sex in the manner that you want them to instead of the manner that they would prefer to. That's seduction. Again, the 2 best examples of seduction is when, number 1 is when a woman tells you that she only wants to have sex with you within the context of a long-term, emotionally profound, monogamous relationship, but you persuade her, you use your persuasive skills to persuade her to engage in at least 1 or 2 episodes of short-term, non-monogamous, casual sex with you. That's seduction. Or another form of example of seduction is, say, a woman is let it be known that she wants to have sex with you, but she tells you she wants to have sex with you at the earliest 3 weeks from now, but you persuade her to have sex with you today, tomorrow, or the next day. That's seduction. But if a woman tells you that she only wants to have sex with a man within the context of a long-term, emotionally profound, monogamous relationship, and you basically give her the misleading impression that that's what you want, and because you pretend like you want the same thing she does, she ends up having sex with you, that's not seduction. That's not seduction. That's manipulation. That's manipulation. That's not seduction. And again, I don't know how many times I can explain this. I've already explained this before. And this goes back to how I started off this video saying, man, it's amazing that I have to explain myself multiple times to members of my own gender. Whereas whenever I talk to women about Mode 1 and my beliefs in my books, my attitudes, my principles, my philosophies, like literally like 98, 99% of the time, they're like, oh, okay, I get it. I really never have to explain myself multiple times to a woman. They're like, oh, okay, I get why you're Mode 1. I get it. Like the most recent conversation I had with this woman, she totally was like, oh, I totally get why you're Mode 1. She like totally understood it. Again, because she knows how manipulative, how members of our own gender are so manipulative. Because she basically went on to say in so many words what I've always said. See, here's the deal you got to understand about women. If all women were, I have 5 archetypes of women. 5 archetypes. Reciprocator, rejector, wholesome pretender, erotic hypocrite, and manipulative time waster. Okay, I think all of you know that by now. If all women were reciprocators and rejectors, now I've always said this, that's when there would be really, for the most part, no need for Mode 1. You can get away with being Mode 2, or maybe even Mode 3. If all women, every woman on planet Earth, was either a reciprocator or a rejector, meaning that from the moment you approach them, within, say, the first 5 minutes after you approach them and start talking to them, they were either to straightforwardly tell you, yes, I'm interested in having sex with you, or no, I'm not interested in having sex with you, then there would really be no need for Mode 1. My approach would basically be null and void. It would, to put another way, there's no need for you to be Mode 1 with women if women are going to be Mode 1 with you first. That would be the alternative way of explaining that. It's really no need for you to be Mode 1 with women if all women on planet Earth had the motivation and the integrity to be Mode 1 with you first. Which would essentially mean that all women would be either reciprocators or rejectors. But here's the reality. The reality is all women are not Mode 1. Matter of fact, not only would I say all women are not Mode 1, I would say most women are not Mode 1. And again, the woman I was talking to, I can't remember if it was last night or the night before, she basically acknowledged that. And she was a woman, and she acknowledged that about her own gender. She was like, most women are not going to be straight up when they're interested in giving you some pussy. And on the flip side, most women are not going to be straight up when they're not interested in giving you some pussy. Which is why I have those other 3 archetypes. The wholesome pretender, the erotic hypocrite, and the manipulative time waster. Because here's the deal, man. For every woman you meet that is interested in having sex with you and will tell you straight up that she's interested in having sex with you, there's probably going to be another 4 or 5 women you're going to meet who are interested in having sex with you that are going to pretend like they're not interested in having sex with you. That's why you have wholesome pretenders and why you have erotic hypocrites. Those are the 2 archetypes of women that are always going to pretend, particularly when it comes to casual sex. Wholesome pretenders and erotic hypocrites are women who are always going to pretend like they have no interest in engaging in short-term, non-monogamous, casual sex, when in actuality, deep down, they do. Deep down, they are open to the idea of engaging in casual sex, and they have already engaged in episodes of casual sex with different men. But they want you to think that they would never, ever engage in casual sex. That's why you have wholesome pretenders and erotic hypocrites. Again, and the woman I spoke to the other night, she acknowledged that. She said, oh yeah, I know a lot of women who are wholesome pretenders and erotic hypocrites. Matter of fact, I think she admitted she said, I've probably even been a wholesome pretender a handful of times in my life. And on the flip side, for every woman you meet that's not interested in having sex with you, and tells you straightforwardly that she's not interested in having sex with you, there's probably going to be another 3 to 5 women who are not interested in having sex with you, but they're going to temporarily or indefinitely give you the misleading impression that they are interested in having sex with you, which again is why I wrote my book, The Possibility of Sex. Most women, if a woman's manipulative, she would rather be a manipulative time waster than a rejecter. Because see, when a woman's a rejecter, she don't get shit out of you. She don't get no flattering and entertaining conversation out of you. She don't get no financial and non-financial favors out of you. She doesn't get you to become an emotionally empathetic listening ear for her, a dancing monkey. None of that shit. If she just straight up rejects you. But see, if a woman's a manipulative time waster, she's going to get you to, at least for a few days, a few weeks, or a few months, she's going to get you to spend a lot of time flattering her, a lot of time entertaining her, a lot of times providing her with financial and or non-financial favors, and a lot of time being her personal, emotionally empathetic listening ear. Then she'll reject you. After she's exploited you and manipulated you, then she rejected you. And that's why Mode 1 is necessary. I'll wrap up with this, and I've used this analogy. I think the last time I used this analogy was when I was either right before or right after I came back from Miami Memorial Day weekend. This is my number one analogy that highlights the effectiveness of Mode 1. My number one analogy I use to highlight the effectiveness of Mode 1. Let's say you had 2 guys that were placed in 2 different rooms in a hotel. Okay? 2 different guys placed in 2 different rooms in a hotel. And you placed them each in a hotel room with 10 women. 10 women. And you told them that they got no more than 2 hours to talk to all 10 of these women. Okay? And you tell each man that in each room that we did what we call pre-screening interviews. Pre-screening interviews. And we found that 3 of these 10 women are potentially interested in having sex with each of these 2 men. 3 women are potentially interested in having sex with these 2 men. And the other 7 women in the room have no interest in having sex with these men. Like none at all. Okay? Got that? 2 men in 2 rooms with 10 women. And out of the 10 women in each room, 3 are potentially interested in having sex with the guy, and 7 women are not interested in having sex with the guy. Okay? And they got 2 hours to talk to each woman, which would be an average of about 11, 12 minutes each woman. Okay? You got that? You got that? Okay, now let's make things interesting and tricky. Now again, go back to what I said about 5 or 10 minutes ago. If every woman in that room was to be a reciprocator or a rejecter, would those men have a hard time identifying who's who? Would they have a hard time identifying the 3 women who are interested in having sex with them from the 7 women who are not? No. Because the women would just end up saying it within the first 5 minutes of the conversation if they were all reciprocators and rejectors. Okay? You got that? It would be easy. It wouldn't be a challenge. But that's unrealistic because not all women are reciprocators and rejectors. So let's say in each of those rooms, let's say of the 3 women that were interested in having sex with the guy, 1 was a reciprocator, 1 was a wholesome pretender, and 1 was an erotic hypocrite. Don't you think that makes things more challenging, more tricky? Huh? In other words, of the 3 women that are interested in having sex with those 2 guys, 2 of the women are going to initially or temporarily pretend like they're not interested in having sex with that guy. unless that guy is very confident, straightforward, and persuasively charming, i.e. mode 1. Then when it comes to the 7 women who are not interested in having sex with each of those 2 guys, instead of all 7 of them being rejectors, let's say 3 of them were rejectors, but 4 of them were manipulative time wasters. Manipulative time wasters, which is very realistic. Because I always tell, man, that on average, no less than 40% of the women you come in contact with in your life are going to be manipulative time wasters. So let's say 4 of the 7 women who are not interested are manipulative time wasters, which means that they're going to spend 5, 10, 15 minutes or longer trying to give a guy the misleading impression that he has at least a 5 to 10% chance of getting that pussy, when in reality, they know from the get-go, they know in their mind that that guy has a 0% chance of getting in their pants. But they're not going to tell that guy that. So if they're not going to straightforwardly tell that guy, how would that guy know? Mode 1, baby. Go out and make some shit happen.
Yes, sir.
Say it again.
Yes, sir.
Who's the king?
Alan, you're the king.
Say it again.
Alan, you're the king. You're dominating me.
Say it again.
Alan, you're dominating me right now. Mode 1.
Mode 1.
Daddy, can I go, please? You're the king.
Say it again.
Oh, you're the fucking king. Yes. Yes. Yes.
You're the king, Alan.
AKA the king of verbal seduction. You know, it's the tone of your voice, how seductive your intonations are, the vibrations that you could just reach out over the phone lines and stroke a woman's breast just by the sound of your voice, how you could make her pussy so wet just by the sound of your voice. That's actually very hot.
So you said my show was what?
I said your show is powerful.
Oh, say it again.
Your show is powerful.
I bet the king would fuck me really good.
Oh, yeah. Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie.
Oh, yeah. Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie. The king.
The king.
The king.